this is not a happy situation for anybody, not for the council, not for the taxpayers, not for anyone, because it really restricts so much what you can actually accomplish.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's very tricky.
That's kind of what I led with my column today.
I mean, never mind the council, anybody who's in business is facing the same kind of situation.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know where your costs are going, and of course, obviously your customers are not happy, you're not happy, and so it doesn't make for a very happy situation in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's going to be tough times. Everybody's going to be on edge.
Yeah, until you see where this thing settles. Because at some point it is going to settle. But who knows for sure where that's going to be.
And how long, right?
That's true, yeah. So nothing else too new or exciting around town, is there?
Not that I can see.
What's the, there was some story about the, you know, the old Chrysler building where they were to build that treatment center?
Yeah.
Of course, being an old garage,
Mm-hmm.
apparently there's problems with the ground. I don't know if that's true or not.
More than likely is true. That's why they wouldn't be really digging anything up, just building on top, right? Renovating. Yeah, you wouldn't want to dig a new foundation there.
Well, the thing about it is, are they going to be able to do what they want to do without doing that?
It's hard to tell. It's not like the plans are public.
Well, it's not even sure when it's supposed to get started. Almost somebody said they were doing some work down there.
Yeah, no, they took a while before they could get the permits to do anything inside, renovations. I think there was some other issues.
But it's, I mean, is it needed? Absolutely.
Yeah, well, they need to do something, and the province is, the last I heard, it's basically, and Mac described it probably the best in the interviews, was province decided to go this way. They had money, and Canadore qualified for this pilot project way of dealing with the situation in different areas. So North Bay is kind of an experiment as far as that goes. Not an experiment on the concept, but experiment on the actually putting money into it and trying to get treatment centers that I don't know. I guess there's some pilot project studies going to be involved with how they deal with addictions. I don't know. What's this mat?
Well, this is a mat. A family has the information from when their grandparents came over and went through Ellis Island.
Oh, okay.
And so the Ellis Island has a sort of a record of who arrived, and you can get a certificate, and it shows, tells you the name of the boat that they came over on, along with the time that they landed and went through Ellis Island. Of course, Ellis Island's famous. In this country, mostly it was Halifax where people landed, but a lot of people, I guess, landed in Ellis Island and then ended up coming up to the up to Canada eventually. That's what happened with my grandfather. He landed at Ellis Island as well, and went to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then ended up going to Sturgeon Falls, where his uncle was. So there's a lot of families that, Canadian families that actually their ancestors went through Ellis Island.
Hmm.
And that's where a lot of names got misspelt too from the original.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I think a lot of them got anglicized a little bit.
No doubt.
Because of the officials that were on Ellis Island, especially, when they were young people, you weren't talking about people in their 30s and 40s mostly. A lot of them, like my grandfather, I don't think he was 20 years old when he landed here.
Well, this guy was 15.
A lot of them are, in just teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't going to argue with an official at Ellis Island if they said, so that's what your name is? Okay, fine, there you go. If it got anglicized a bit, I guess that was okay because they were just happy to get into North America.
Yeah.
They didn't want to cause any commotion, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, not going to argue with somebody about spelling their name right.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that was in the cards.
So for this mat, you got a number of different square cuts, or?
Yeah, we're just putting a little bit of sort of V-grooving in it to sort of use the white of the board in order to just to jazz it up a little bit so that, because with documents, generally speaking, if you go and read them if they're on the wall, but it's nice if you're looking at them that they look fairly arty, so we use a lot of V-grooves and stuff like that to just kind of jazz them up a little bit. So we wanted to talk about good stories on paintings.
Yes, that, and just a brief sort of sayonara from council.
Oh, okay. Well,
Let me get my other microphone, I'll be back in a second.
all right.
Why you cut this one in half? You split it.
Well, because that's the way the groove's got to go. To have the line go around.
Oh.
You see, that's why I notched
Why
it
the
out
little
from-
blue goes, the little hole?
Well, because you see where it is here on the ship.
Oh, I see.
You got to have the title for the ship. That's what that little hole is. So that's why we're doing that. So it's got to go like that.
So how did it feel to be at your last council meeting?
Well, we didn't really have a last council meeting only months and months ago.
I guess so.
Yeah, because you see, it was a lame duck council.
Yeah.
Because they knew the mayor wasn't running, and there were three of us that weren't running as well, because you had to count Joanne because she was moving her position. So if you have a lame duck council, you really can't make any decisions, and it.
And what is the cutoff? Like more than 2 councillors not returning?
It's a percentage, so depending on the council, it's sort of regrettable because we didn't really have an opportunity, to say goodbye, in particularly to the mayor who, served 3 terms and done a good job and dedicated his life, for that, what essentially was 12 years to being in that office, and he certainly worked hard at it. So we really never had an opportunity, because of the lame duck situation, to get together. And of course now, when you've had a few other members that were defeated, and you have a new council, well, it's, pretty much the opportunity's gone. And that's too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I guess there's no way around it.
No, not really. I mean, unless somebody has a private gathering and invites everybody, but I don't see that happening. And
Maybe I'll have you all invite you all out to the hacienda to have a post-elected official barbecue. Jesus. I don't know. So, as you're alluding to and saying, describing, it's going to be a tough year for that new council. So you're not really going to miss it, eh?
Well, no. I mean, the other thing is I had made up my mind. Actually, when I ran the last time in 2018, that there wouldn't be any other election campaigns, win, lose, draw, whatever. And as it turned out, unfortunately, I had to replace my friend Mike Anthony. So I did come back for a couple of years, but I'd made up my mind because that signaled 40 years from when I was first elected, into the last Merle Dickerson sort of administration, we might say. So I thought, 40 years is a good, nice round number. Leave it at that. And I think it's always nice to leave on your own rather than being kicked out of office. But I guess that happens too. And I guess technically it might have happened to me if it wasn't for the unfortunate circumstance. And then of course later, young Teganelli took a job with the city. So then of course we had another replacement come in. I would expect there's a good chance in a 4-year term, like over the years, there have been a number of people that have come on because someone either got a job and got transferred, or someone died, or something came up. So is it likely that this could happen in this term and the 11th person could come on? Maybe even the 12th as well? Anything's possible.
Yeah, so Scott Kyle could go on.
Yeah.
Who was number 12?
I believe Derek Shogren.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. So
two strong replacements, I'd say.
Yeah. There's and of course it's always been the practice, and I can't see it changing, that they offer the job to the next person in line, because we do have this system, because we don't have a ward system of wherever you finish, you get certain privileges. And if you finish in the top 10, your privilege is to actually sit on council.
Yeah.
But that's how they pick committee chairs, and how vice chairs are picked, and how boards and commission memberships and the rest of it are all selected, all by the pecking order. Now, if you had a ward system, then you wouldn't have that. Then you would basically, the mayor would have a lot to say about, who his deputy mayor would be, and who would be filling different committees. Because after all, how could you measure votes when it was in different wards?
Would it be the mayor, or would the council vote for the different chairs? Because it doesn't necessarily be the mayor, depending on what procedure bylaw you agree to for a ward system.
Although, generally speaking, I think that in most cases the mayor would have a lot of influence.
Oh yeah.
In that situation, and to some degree, if you actually think about it, if you're the prime minister or you're the premier of the province, you get to select your cabinet based on people's expertise. You just can't have.
You're talking about like guys like Stuffin Leesingy, Minister of Education?
Well.
Expertise?
Well, I'm talking about if you have a finance minister, you need somebody who knows something about finances and who's pretty good with numbers, you would expect that they would have some expertise, in the area. Now, I'm sure the Minister of Education you mentioned has expertise in education because he was educated. So be it that it was, not in the public system, but I think he knows what a good education is. You can be sure of that, because if you're educated in the private schools, they tend to, be a little more, just how to put this diplomatically, but they're often more centered because there's smaller classes and this, that, and the other thing.
Well, apparently they don't teach character necessarily.
Well, it
I
depends.
follow the guy on Twitter. There's no way that he's. Okay, I see your point, but I don't know necessarily that transfers over to municipal politics.
Well, I mean,
'Cause it's pretty, people are elected on popularity.
well, yeah, I mean, elections generally end up being a popularity contest
Yeah.
to some degree, but a lot of it too, I think, is on competence and experience. In fact, I think that's why Peter Chirico is the mayor of the city of North Bay today. I think a lot of people knew what his track record was when he was, deputy mayor, and they also knew, him as the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And in fact, I can tell you, I was speaking to one individual who said to me that the reason they voted for Peter was because, they were friends with Jack Burrows, and Peter was his deputy, and they remember Jack Burrows saying that he could count on Peter as his deputy mayor. So, with that kind of, recommendation, and those recommendations flow through the community. People talk to each other. And so, I think that's one of the, I realize it was a fairly slim victory, but I think that his past competence and what he'd done as a deputy mayor served him well to get elected.
Well, that would explain at least the part of the 5% increase in votes that he got over Brosseau. He's just a slightly better candidate.
Yeah, let's face it, he was a good candidate.
Yeah.
And if you take a look at the council, the guys who were up front in some of the more serious issues, like Castleholm, both Mark and Chris were re-elected. Tanya was re-elected. People appreciated. She did a good job as the deputy mayor. I know she's probably not too tickled with the position she arrived at, but she's still very much there. I think Mac, who was always very level-headed, and then of course was quite involved with the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, brought the provincial and the Northern Ontario perspective of municipal groups to council. I think he was well respected in that way, and was always talking about that. So there are. If you take a look at stuff, there are reasons why people get elected and re-elected.
Yeah, depending on who they're running against. Peter definitely was the best candidate for mayor that was running, based on paper and most of reputation. And councillors, other than maybe one or two people that were good quality candidates for council, otherwise I can see why the ones that won and won their seats.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Well, and there was
The top 15 would make a good council.
Yeah, and you see, I think there was probably even a little spillover. It would have been really nice to elect a female mayor. There's no question about it. In fact, going into the centennial year of the city of North Bay, which this council is going to be there when it's the centennial year in 2025,
Mm-hmm.
It would have been interesting to historically show
Mm-hmm.
a woman in that position. But having said that, I think some people who may not have wanted to vote for for the female candidate for mayor, it could have very well translated, well, let's give some more votes to the women who've put their names forward. And so that might even be one of the, you might have had some spillover that way. I'll vote for Peter, but I'm going to give some serious votes to the ladies who've put their names forward for council, because they were looking for a change, and that was a big, a substantial, historic change.
Mm-hmm.
And and generally we don't get that kind of a historic change. There's always lots of talk about change, and then when the election's over, you look at it and you think, that was change? Not really, but this time, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good.
Yeah. Yeah. If it wasn't for the difficult times they're facing, they'd have a better chance at actually doing early change in their term, right? They're going to have to do a little bit more of a slow burn, I guess, eh?
Well, of course, outside of the replacement of West Ferris Arena,
Mm-hmm.
and the usual infrastructure stuff,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing, really hugely looming. You always have an infrastructure deficit. I mean, I'm going to be curious to see what they do, because, most cities would have a special centennial project that they would adopt and they would put money towards. And whether there's any money anywhere for that, because you don't really want to take it away from roads and water and sewer, obviously, for obvious reasons, because you have to keep your infrastructure up. And I guess maybe this is what leaves the door open for the replacement of West Ferris Arena, which, interestingly enough, was a 1967 centennial project,
Mm-hmm.
Canada's centennial. And maybe now for the city's centennial, they can come up with a community center
Mm-hmm.
plan that that satisfies both things. Because the other thing that people have to realize is that Double Rinks is getting close to the end of its life cycle too. So you can't dither too long with replacing ice surfaces to some degree. But the other thing is, I mean, if you look at who voted in the election, it was the older population. So what's in a community center for a centennial project for seniors? And I think the council needs to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit, they'll say, well, we let the seniors walk around the rink, like they do at Memorial Gardens. Well, that doesn't really cut it, does it? I mean, there needs to be some space for seniors to have some activities, that space needs to be built and, as we say, somewhat subsidized by the citizens. And when you have an aging population and the people who are really the ones who are voting in the municipal election, I think you need to pay attention to this project and keep the seniors seriously in mind.
It's not enough just to focus in on the grandkids?
Well,
Potential new voters?
Yeah, well, grandchildren are important, but I mean, it's like how many of our grandchildren actually went out and voted, even if they were of voting age?
So there was one stat that I have to look further into, but 78 new 18-year-old voters. Is that a high number or a low number?
I have no idea. I can never recall anybody calculating who voted and who didn't, and it'd be curious to know how they actually came to those demographic conclusions because there's nowhere on the ballot that they ask you to indicate your age, right?
Well, it is, they know who's a new voter, because it's a new addition to the voting list by age.
Yeah, well, I mean, they didn't know who the voters were when it came to sending out the PIN numbers to vote. To vote online.
Yeah.
Like for example, in my home, I got one, and Dawn didn't, and her name is beside mine on the tax bill and the water bill and everything else at that address.
Right. Yeah.
And she's lived there as long as I have lived there. So how about that? And then I understand Mark King's wife was in the same position. She didn't get one. And then some people got two. So,
And their kids that lived elsewhere got them too.
So really, do we...
Can you count on their stats?
Yeah, I mean, can you really count on the stats? And I realize it was the first time.
Yeah.
You can always have a few little blips,
Probably
obviously.
a lot of these same things are dealt with when people go to vote. And they don't get a notice that they're eligible to vote, but not when they get a PIN. That was different, get an online PIN.
Yeah.
And I had an online PIN. Actually, I somehow qualified as a non-resident voter myself, just because of my unverified lease, sublease.
Well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's...
I didn't vote though.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure. It actually, the fine print would say I was eligible through with a sublease. I'm not sure. I have to double check that.
Yeah. Well, technically, if you're if you're a tenant,
yeah,
you're allowed to vote.
Yeah, but.
And I mean, if you're
subleases are sometimes dealt with differently.
Yeah.
I know insurance does. Right. So.
But anyhow, this is like just getting back to the challenges that the new council have. They have many, but the other thing you have to look at is we have an experienced staff.
Mm-hmm.
The people right through all of the different departments in the leadership, and they're an experienced staff. And after all, we're not elected to basically run the day-to-day operations of the city. In fact, we're not supposed to stick our nose in those things. And they're there to set policy, and you can control a lot of things. It's like the old story: who pays the fiddler calls the tune. So if you don't put money in the budget for something, even though it may be a pet project of staff, if it doesn't get financed, it's not a pet project.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. So, I mean, and that's where the first budget's going to be very tricky. Because, especially with the inflationary pressures and all of these other things, there are going to be some long nights. And I'm glad I'm not going to be there for them.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to put in their time. They may very well regret they ever signed up for this thing.
Sure.
But I guess that'll remain to be seen.
How old are you, George?
I'll be 77 next month.
And you had 24 consecutive years on council plus a few others?
Yeah, well, like 82 to 2006, I guess. I quit in 2006 after my mom passed away.
Yeah.
And then I returned in 2010, so you're going to have to do the math.
So 34 total.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. 4 and 2, basically, that I was off. So if you subtract that from 40, yeah, that's where we got. We're struggling with mathematics.
Yeah. Well, I can make those edits. That's funny. Lana might.
Yeah, there's some edits you should have made.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I I think in the long run, it was good for that message to be heard loud and clear, and that was the only time it could ever be heard. Just to stand up to any thought of being bullied, right? So, I'll take that one. I'll take that one. Yeah, there's bigger and better reasons not to like me, I think. But did you see my column today? No.
No, I haven't seen the column.
So it starts out. It looks like it's going to be a very busy and challenging term for this mayor and council. They got a lot on their plate, staff as well. So I'm going to help you out with this one issue. I know where you can get a surplus lot to sell for a residential addition to the tax roll, and Stuffles streets it. And thankfully that the city just unveiled its GIS mapping system. I went onto it and I found where there's a corridor of public space just up the street that goes into the back escarpment public space. So it's not necessary to have Stuffles Street at all. So here, I'm fixing your little problem.
So you're just trying to further cause trouble, are you?
I want this thing to be fixed. Yeah, I'm not backing down. I'm standing with Sylvia Ross right until the wall. Right? Yeah, and then I also included a photo of Peter Chirico's election sign stuck on the side of his house, pointing directly into his other neighbor's kitchen window, and it's still sitting there, 3 weeks after the election.
Oh, wow.
So it's unfortunate the strong winds blew it there, but somebody should take it down. Yeah.
Well, neighborhood disagreements are always difficult.
Oh,
My experience over the years has been, because, on occasion you get called, and a lot of times it would be about a neighbor's tree that people were concerned is going to fall and hit their house. And the thing about it is, people do have property rights to a certain degree. And I mean, in the end, the advice I often gave people would be that, this is nothing that the city can do about this. This is a neighborhood problem. So what you need to do is you need to hire a lawyer and have the lawyer take it up with your neighbor. And this goes for drainage problems, sometimes where people actually will fill their lots so that they're higher than their neighbors after the fact, or build, when they build driveways, change the drainage, which of course you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to make a change so you set up so that your lot drains all the way onto your neighbor's lot, so you don't get water and they get all yours as well. And, so it's called, there's a profession that just loves this stuff. They thrive on little disputes between people and corporations and all the rest of it. So,
what do you do when it's a city road allowance? So,
well,
did you ever get called the one that's right beside a mayor's house?
No, but we have lots of trouble with lakefront road allowances.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And they have to be resolved, and people are not happy because they're always very touchy because somebody buys a beautiful home that's on the lake, and lo and behold, they are right beside a road allowance. Now, they don't mind the fact that the city plows this road allowance, and they don't mind the fact that that's the way they get into their property off the road allowance into their garage. But they sure do mind it when you get a bunch of rowdy teenagers, or I shouldn't blame teenagers, rowdy people, who wander down onto that lakefront allowance and have a big party into the night going on and disturbing everybody. And it's not something that's easily handled either by the police, because they often would have bigger fish to fry than some noise, right? And And of course, you can just guess what also happens is if the police are called and it happens to be a neighborhood group, and so absolutely they'll get run off that one day. But what sort of future retribution could there be to your property because you called the police? So it's not a happy situation. Yet at the same time, other members of the public who do use that and use it without, causing a disturbance, they appreciate it being there and that having that access to the lake, and that's why they were designed to be that way, and they have every right to go there. And we get encroachments, and we get this, and we get that. So it's sort of a continuing battle. So our road allowances, is this one up there the first one in the history of the city of North Bay that has problems between neighbors and neighborhood? Absolutely not.
First one for a mayor.
Well, of course, he wasn't the mayor, was he?
He was running for mayor.
But,
and he was deputy mayor when she was trying to get it closed up the first time, and then they decided to change their mind.
Yeah.
I think it's a special case, George. It's not your usual neighborhood stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but
Although I could do a whole call-in show on neighborhood squabbles, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I mean, the advice I would give is the advice I always gave, which is called, if you think that you have a case and there's a wrongdoing here, and that the city has not responded as they should have, well, lawyers sue cities, they sue neighbors. I mean, they'll sue anybody as long as you pay them, right?
Of course they will, but she shouldn't have to hire a lawyer to sue the city to do its job, to deal with a road allowance that wasn't dealt with properly. Come on.
Well, but the thing is, a smart lawyer could take that case on and demand, if it's a good case, do it and be paid from when they win the case, because the judge has to award costs.
People already have to go out of town to get lawyers in this town, because you can't take a lawyer and go up against anybody at the city or somebody that's elected, because everybody's in on it together. I know all kinds of cases where people couldn't even hire a lawyer in North Bay if they're trying to take on the wrong people.
Well, I guess that's what they have to do.
Yeah, well, I guess so.
Is it right? Probably not. But then, the thing about it is, lawyers have to be careful of conflict of interest as well, if they have clients, and because they could be sued. Because and if that's the case, and I guess in some cases it's almost like, can you find a jury of your peers in town that'll be impartial to some horrendous crime? Well, no, maybe we have to go out of town.
Yeah.
Again, there are special cases, but I don't see it as something that's, there's a way to resolve it if people want to resolve it.
Yeah, maybe.
It can be.
They certainly want it resolved.
Yeah. Well, then I think they need to take the advice, which is, if you want this resolved, and you feel you're not getting satisfaction and that you're not being treated fairly in the situation, then there is a legal process in this country. I mean, that's why else do we have laws if we can't exercise them? If we can't exercise the rules?
Well, it's the city's own rules they're not exercising.
Well, that wouldn't be the first time.
Anyways, point taken.
Yeah.
Headline: Maroosis suggests neighbor hires lawyer.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, if I was a councillor and she had called me, which she never did, and said this is a situation, I would have had to say, well, you need to hire a lawyer. This is not, you need legal representation.
Probably absolutely close to correct. I would agree with that, because it's been going on that long and it hadn't had any traction, and the attempts we're discouraging? Maybe, yeah, maybe.
I mean, this is, I mean, I can't see, I mean, what is a councillor going to do if they're called to try and rectify the situation? And, you know, it's like you have to give people the best advice that you can. It's unfortunate advice, but what else can you do? And I mean, and many people have had that advice in a, you know, in a number of occasions.
No doubt. I've heard of many.
Yeah. So this is what you have to do.
Well, in the spirit of not wanting to beat a dead horse over it, the city has lots of lawsuits, more than it can handle already. But maybe that's what it takes. Maybe that's what it takes.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure suing the city is the first step in a neighborhood dispute.
Well, I think she's at step 10 at this point.
Yeah, but has there been a lawyer involved?
No.
Well.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, it's become a legal matter, hasn't it?
I think it's a political matter. I still believe it is. So it's
Well,
reputational. It's the city's problem.
well, let's put it this way. I mean, you know, the current mayor has been on council for a few years. You know, and during that period of time, I've been there. I've never heard of this before.
Mm.
I mean, it's news to me.
Yeah, it's been to council. You were on council when it was on council. The road allowance was an issue in 2002. It was supposed to be stopped up and sold as surplus. Then they changed their mind in 2005. I don't know. There's letters. There's letters to mayor and council that never seem to have got on the agenda.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like you could be helpful to a lawyer who wanted to take the case, David, because you know a lot more about it than I do.
Well, she's got all the papers and records. I guess she wanted to go that route.
Yeah.
I think she's of the opinion that it should be dealt with by the city because it's elected officials involved. So.
Well, it's probably more of a reason to for a citizen to hire a lawyer if they feel that they're not going to be treated fairly because of, you know, some, you know, perceived privilege, which I would say is perceived. Then they need to hire a lawyer. I mean, we're right back to the simple advice that I've given people many times, mostly over trees that were not in good shape or actually dead in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think you can give anybody any better advice than that. And I mean, the world's not a perfect place. If it was, you know, we wouldn't have these situations. We wouldn't have courts. We wouldn't have laws. We wouldn't have lawyers or police or all the rest of it. It's called, you know, this is a property matter and it has to be dealt with properly.
It's just, yeah. I'm just going to go around in a circle. It's a city property matter.
Well, it's become a private property matter because it's a private citizen that is complaining. And, you know, I mean, you're right, you're just going around in circles, but there's no point in beating a dead horse. I mean, it's called, you know, if there's a case,
Yeah.
go and sit with a lawyer and have the lawyer review it and say, well, I think we can do this, that, or the other thing. And if the lawyer says, well, no, I don't think, you know, this will work, if they get some legal advice, well then, you either got to put it to bed or go and see a different lawyer and see what they think.
Yeah, well.
And I'll tell you, if you can find a lawyer that'll do it, for costs that are associated to winning the case, then you've won a small lottery, haven't you? When you don't have to put up a retainer. Because they say, this is a great case, we can win this, and we can get our fees.
Well, I'm against the tort and lawyer sort of concept of solving all things, especially when they're involving public people, public elected officials, public land. I wouldn't agree on this case. I don't like having to go to lawyers myself. In the perfect world, we wouldn't have to. The rules are already in place.
But, you know, the problem with rules is the interpretation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and this is where you know, there's always gray areas. Nothing is totally clear. And I mean, because let's face it, if it was an absolute law, then the police would go up there and deal with it, because they would have the law. Okay? But it's not. It's property. And I mean, it's tricky. It's not that straightforward. And I mean, obviously, lawyers have their role in it. I mean, it's a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter. It could become a criminal matter if somebody assaulted someone over a property line. But that wouldn't even have anything to do with where the property line was. It wouldn't solve the property line situation either. It would just be a case of assault, and someone would be punished for losing their cool, which I'm glad that has not happened up there. You know?
I think the cops did talk to somebody that lives there about leaving election signs alone on the public road allowance.
Well, you're not supposed to touch election signs.
That's what the person was told.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter where they are. You know, if they're there on public land, following the sign bylaw, and there is quite an elaborate election sign bylaw these days about size and how many signs and how many this, that, and the other thing. In certain places, you'll notice that people were very respectful about the waterfront. You don't see them popping up there. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and you know, people didn't put signs. Well, of course, the Algonquin Memorial is under construction, but you know that was always a no-no. I mean, people understood what was right and what wasn't when it came to signs.
Yeah, that tightened up a little bit this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not the biggest issue in the world. How long are you allowed to have an election sign on your private property? Can you just keep it up?
I don't know. I suppose your private property, you can do what you want with it. I mean, why, you know, if somebody wants to leave a sign up, they can leave it up, I guess, until it falls down. There's no law that says there is on public property where they have to be removed, but on private property, if it's your private property, I guess
You just stay up the whole time.
You can put it up the whole time and just leave it there. I could put one of my old signs up in my backyard there. Who could complain?
What do you think about election signs? There's some talk that you know, maybe that it's a plastic and the preponderance of it is both an environmental hazard, but also it's hard for new candidates to get into the game when they're competing against budgets that are bigger.
Well, as a matter of fact, I think that election signage is one of the ways where you can level the playing field between the incumbents and the new people. Because can you imagine
Name
now,
recognition, yeah.
when it comes to, that's right, in name recognition, and if a candidate doesn't have a bit of a budget or support in order to raise some funds, maybe that tells them something about what their chances are at the polls. Now, Gary Gardner proved to people that you didn't have to put signs up
If you run for mayor 4 years prior.
But, you know, just the same,
Yeah.
he took a risk.
Yeah.
And do I think he would have finished higher if he'd put some signs out? Probably. And yet we've had other candidates who had, you know, just plastered the town with signs and weren't successful. So do signs alone do the job? No, it's just part of the formula.
Yeah.
And I'm not for restricting anything that gives unfair advantage to the incumbents.
That's a good point. Good point of view. Yeah.
You know, I think if you're going to be fair, you can't give you know, people who've had, you know, opportunities to be focused in the media of all sorts, to have their name attached to a lot of stuff that is going on and be out and seen and around as an elected official. You know, they definitely have an advantage. And I guess to some degree, it might even be a disadvantage because, you know, maybe somebody spots something they're doing that they don't like.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Name recognition can work both ways.
Yeah,
Cut
exactly.
both ways. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep. I like that point. It actually is, if you can get the money together for signs or get enough people building them, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Vraybosches are a perfect example. I mean, they generally used homemade signs. This year they didn't. But they generally made their own signs with a stencil and got some material and, you know, a can of spray paint and
when they did buy
went at
signs,
it.
Vraybosch would cut off the PC part and just use them for a mayoral race in East Fairs.
Yeah, well, why not?
No, it's
You know, I mean, he's
frugal,
yeah,
and it's smart.
and it's recycling.
It's recycling.
Recycling
There's
signs.
absolutely nothing wrong with it, but it's fun.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it is what it is, isn't it? And I
Yeah.
mean, that's
Whatever it
that's-
takes.
Yeah, and that's fair.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be fair with that. And you know, I mean, interestingly enough, one of the things that the new candidates are going to discover is that going grocery shopping is a more difficult chore when you're all of a sudden people recognize you.
Yeah.
Because they, you know, at a grocery store, it's very approachable. You know, you're there with a cart picking stuff up and people chat with you all of the time. My wife always hated going grocery shopping with me because it was, holy smokes, it takes a long time. And of course, Merle Dickerson, he was famous for what he would do, is he would get a cart and he would shop around the grocery store and then just put a few things in the cart, chat with a whole bunch of people, and then when he figured he'd had enough, he'd just leave the cart and go, and then maybe go back another grocery store another time or this, that, the other. Because it's a great, people, you know, people approach you, and if you were there approaching people as Merle would have, and of course he was well known because he'd been around for so many years.
Court in the
And,
the cheese aisle.
Exactly. And so if you want to talk about campaigning, I mean, it's a great way to do it because you get to meet a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what the new candidates will find is that they are going to meet a lot of people. And most people are very gracious. The odd time, you'll wish you hadn't gone to that grocery store at that particular moment, but generally speaking, people are very good.
Mm. Your memories for being on council and being in the public like that, something similar, but any time when you were at a public place where it was, it became too hot and heavy?
Well, I mean, the odd time you run into a character, possibly like at a hockey game or a crowded fundraiser, you know, where you have people. But I mean, let's face it, I have an open door here at my store, and I've been in this building since 1978, and people they don't seem to mind. I mean, a lot of times people will come in and apologize for, is it okay? Some people, of course, don't. And then the odd time the door opens and they'll say something quite uncomplimentary about a position I took at council and then just leave. So, but I mean, that's life, eh? I mean, I always thought it was great to have that door open and people be able to come in freely and chat. And I mean, they still do. And I'm sure that, you know, if somebody comes in and I'm not on council and they have a problem, I can at least recommend them maybe to the right councillor, or if it happens to be the committee chair or whatever, who could help them, or even call this person at City Hall and, you know, get an extension for them. You know, I don't mind doing that because, you know, after all, they're your neighbors. Whether they happen to live next door to you or not, we're still all neighbors in this community. And so you can, you know, you can do that kind of thing. It's been very much open door, and I'm sure I'm still going to have people who will come in, and I don't have a problem with it. I mean,
What's the most controversial position you took in your 32 years as a councillor?
Yeah, I don't know. I know the one that probably cost me the most number of votes. And you might find this amusing, but when the council decided to put water meters in, and I certainly wasn't the only person who voted for that, I was asked by the mayor to chair a committee to try to make the rates and the transition to water meters as fair as possible. You know, the percentage of fixed versus variable, and to have a look at a variety of things that had to do with water meters. And do I like water meters? Probably not. Do I like hydro meters? I like them even less, but they are necessary, because why should you be able to use all the hydro you want or all the water you want without having some way of gauging it? I mean, really. So, but it has to be fair. So I chaired this committee, and we did a great job. We had a lot of meetings, and we came up with a fair formula that we sold to council and all the rest of it. The problem was, I got a lot of publicity because I was chairing this committee, and people, you know, it's they don't quite listen to the whole story. They just figured that Maroosis, he's the guy. He's the water meter. Yeah, he's the water meter guy. Because I met people who said, I disagree with you bringing water meters into the community. I said, I didn't bring them in. I'm trying to make sure that they're fair, and that you know, there's an equitable system that makes sense. Well, no, you know, they just discount that because they had this put in. When it comes to an absolute controversial position, I guess that was when, just recently in the last term, that had to do with the vaccine policy, where I abstained, which is a negative vote, but I thought abstention was the way to go, and because I'm not anti-vaccine, and that's why I chose abstention rather than no. If I was anti-vaccine, I would have voted a solid no. Turns out it was a no anyway, although the people suing the council over this thing don't realize that, because they're suing me too. And anyway, but I could have supported a leave of absence without pay even, but to take someone's job over that vaccine policy just seemed wrong to me.
100% I agree with you.
You know, it just seemed wrong to me. So that's probably the most controversial position that I took. And I mean, if I had to do it again tomorrow, I would do the same thing, because it just seems wrong to take a person's job from them. And anyway, interestingly enough, I've never had a comment from anyone in the general public about that position that I took. Because I think most of the time people don't really understand what abstention is anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know that the people who gave the list to the group that was suing the members of council and other councils that passed these kinds of restrictions, they got my name and I got the documents. I thought, oh, well, all this proves is that people don't pay attention.
Yeah.
But that's the most controversial thing, I think.
Yeah. A lot of decisions that were made were a little heavy-handed, I thought, considering the circumstances and the lack of real certainty of it being a proper decision for the protection of people.
Yeah, well, of course, it's always easy to assess after the fact. I mean, at the time when there were so many unknowns and people were really worried, the government had to respond. It was just something that happened. Now, of course, we tend to be living with it, and I mean, as we speak, there are more outbreaks, and we're more concerned about the flu season, and we're concerned about younger children, and of course, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but they claim that one of the reasons that younger children are more susceptible now to these respiratory illnesses is because they weren't out and around and maybe didn't contact some of the germs that they normally would have, that, the body would have built up some immunities because they were isolated and all the rest of it. I mean, once again, who knows for certain? Sounds reasonable to me, but I'm a layman. It's always easy after the fact. It's like having watched a game and then you say, oh, wow, they should have done such and such and such and such a point. And it would have changed the result. Well, that's easy after you've seen the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, now we have seen it. And you can see they're not anxious, they're making recommendations as we speak about masking. But governments are pretty gun shy about shutting things down again.
I didn't see a mask in the chamber coverage of the swearing-in ceremony the other night. It was pretty packed chamber. The day after they recommended that you should wear a mask.
Well, I know there was one young lad in a wheelchair there that had a mask on.
Okay, yeah, didn't see him in the...
Yeah, so I think there were probably some people there with masks. I mean, I think you'll find more people, maybe if you go, I mean, we're back to the grocery store.
Yeah.
The grocery store, it's a great place.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why, if I was a journalist looking for public opinion, I think I'd be like Merle Dickerson. I think I'd have a shopping cart with a few groceries in it, and I would be talking to people in grocery stores because, I mean, that's where you get the real general public, don't you? And they're going to be talking to a real person. It's not like, they get a phone call and they go, oh, we want to give you a little survey. Would you answer a couple little questions or this, that, and the other? People are going to give you the more straight goods because they're going to be at ease, right? And, it's a great way to get information.
Mm-hmm.
It's just from people while they're out.
I have plenty of conversations in grocery stores.
Yeah.
I have been asked to leave malls where I was actually interviewing people.
Well, you have, eh?
You can't be a little too obvious about it, that's for darn sure.
Yeah, well, you might be asked to leave more places as time goes on with some of your famous interviews and positions, David.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had a choice in the matter. Doesn't seem like I don't feel like I do. Yeah, I don't feel like I do. But I'm certainly glad you welcomed me into your shop for this interview.
Oh yeah, well, my shop has a collection of characters that visit all the time, David. So we can put you in that bracket. we don't agree with their opinions entirely, In fact, we may agree with very little that they have to say, but they're still welcome, and we enjoy them. And we've enjoyed characters over the years, and unfortunately, we've lost so many of them who became friends over the years, who were characters. But then new ones spring up, so you're a new one now.
I guess so.
You're due to the collection. My kids always say to me, they say, "Geez, Dad, you sure attract some crazy people."
What's that say about you, George? What's that say about you?
Well, I think, who knows? I think that this is part of what they say. Either maybe I'm just very tolerant, David.
You'd have to be, for sure.
And of course, being in the art business, I'm used to dealing with characters.
Yeah, for sure.
You
Well,
know?
tell me about one or two of your characters that you've lost over the years that made this a special meeting place.
Well, one of the top of the list was a fellow who came from Moonbeam. Andy was his name, and he was actually well known around town at the time because he used to make paper boats without, just by folding them and give them to people out on the bus. And he had arrived in North Bay because of the Ontario Hospital, and I guess he had something physically that was putting pressure somewhere on his on his head somewhere, that so it was causing him some distress and to behave, I guess, irrationally. And then that got fixed up, and he was such a character that he actually got a letter saying that he was sane, as he put it. I never saw the letter, and I don't imagine any psychiatrist would write that. But anyway, he used to go on about that. But he'd been the head of the Pulp and Papers Union up north. So he was very well educated and a very interesting character. And he was here for a number of years. I mean, my friend Wayne Poeta, who had sat on council with, he became a regular, not only when he was on council, but after the fact. And he was always in here. We always had a lot of fun. And of course, you just saw my friend Mike Papatheodora, who ran Mike's Seafood and the Deluxe Snack Bar downtown, who had his own collection of characters. And he comes every morning. He's retired, and we have people that, he drops in. I mean, we've had continuous, well, I've got Lawrence Twain. I mean, I think you know who Lawrence is. Mm-hmm. You know, Lawrence is, speaking of lawyers, he's a pseudo-lawyer. We call him the Law Hawk. I don't think he's, I'm not sure that he ever even graduated from elementary school, but he's a very smart person and quite a character. And speaking of suing people, that's Lawrence's favorite thing. He's always threatening to sue people, and he was a residential school survivor, of course.
You had that incident with the cops, eh?
That's right. Yeah, a very unfortunate circumstance, And currently, he's in the hospital. He's had a stroke, and he's somewhat his mobility is restricted, and we're hoping that he's going to be able to get out of there and get, because people do get over mild strokes and get some mobility back and be able to go back to his apartment. But so I mean, like, we had a lot of characters over the years. I mean, not even talking about artists like Ernest Taylor, who was a real character. In fact, we still have Ernie sitting on the other side there.
Yeah. Speaking of characters, I had breakfast with Dennis Stokes. He's a teacher and a poet and that kind of thing. He's involved with the Conspiracy of Three, the reading group. But he said that he was good friends with one of your friends, Frank Polson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank is one of our feature artists.
Yeah.
And has been since the day he wandered in here, over 20 years ago. This in fact is how we get most of our artists. It's not like we advertise for artists, but they wander in, we see their work, we like their work. We can come to an agreement on price because, once again, if they want too much and you look at it and say, well, I'm sorry, I don't think we can sell that, we're not going to waste their time or our time.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be, set in a reasonable fashion. So over the years, the First Nations artists to wander into this store were Norval Morrisseau, the Kakagakmik brothers, and Carl Ray
Mm.
in the 70s.
Yeah.
After that, Josh was here and actually painted in the store and painted upstairs in the apartment, and when he lived here in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And because we sell art supplies too, I've sold art supplies to Ken Danby when Ken Danby was here doing Art Experience back years ago when Canadore used to run Art Experience. So, if you're an artist and you're in the community, chances are, you've been in here. My friend from Mattawa, Claremont Duval, in fact, I sold him his first tube of paint. At that time, he's in the jewelry business, and he was doing French language comic books. And he came in, and I sold him some paint, and then he went on to paint and open his own gallery, and he still comes and buys paint from me, and I always tease him. I say, just now that you're a big shot artist, you're still buying. Oh, he says, I never forget, it's George, where I started. So, that's why this is such a great business. And everybody says, when are you going to retire? And it's like, retire to do what,
Yeah.
As I think I told you before, when I bought this business in the 70s, my dad, and because our family business is restaurants, he walked in and looked around and he said, boy, this is like being semi-retired. Because the restaurant business is one tough business.
Yeah.
Long hours and hard work, always on your feet and moving this, that, and the other thing. We're around here, we're pretty laid back, we don't, we're not running an emergency room here.
Yeah.
Now, the odd time if somebody needs something right away, and very often it's because they've lost a member of their family and they need something framed for a celebration of life or
Mm-hmm.
funeral or
Yeah.
whatever, then, we get right at it and get it done right away. But, or if somebody's forgotten their wife's birthday and it's their day and, there's the odd little emergency. But generally speaking, the rule is this is not an emergency room, so relax.
You just framed up a Nikki Patterson piece of art for me. What do you know about Nikki?
Well, I remember Nikki from the old days and as a character.
Yeah, for sure.
She sure was a character, and she was involved with the North Bay and District Art Association,
Mm-hmm.
the North Bay Art Association. It's always nice. I know that people who take classes or go to open studios, it sort of gets them to painting.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on your own at home, well, we're all great procrastinators. We can always find something else to do unless...
I'm going to paint someday.
Are you? Well, we'd be
someday.
interested in seeing that. But,
I got one of my first freelance jobs as a photographer with her through Mike Demorier when I was a student at Canadore. I think it was in 87, 88 maybe, where she had me shoot her artwork on Ektachrome for slides for an art show she was applying for. So I went to her place and I did my best of shooting so that then I had to take the slides apart and crop them with black electrical tape, right? And I had to do it twice because she was teaching me about how to do quality work, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple I had to reshoot, but she was a character for sure.
yeah, no, she was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one other artist I did a job for in Toronto. I used to be on this day labor thing down in Toronto, and you get these odd jobs, and one of them was hanging art in somebody's house for a big gallery she was creating, but she couldn't climb up and down the ladder. So I remember that downtown Toronto somewhere. some big tall little house, or where I was putting art on. I was like, I had a ladder on the stairs, for Christ's sakes, right? Trying to put this up on. Yeah.
You gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, artists are crazy, but yeah. No, you got a lot of history here. I appreciate your that you were a good counselor, because I could see the work you did, and I knew you had the inside information, the street level information, plus the institutional knowledge to at least take a last minute look at potential problems, which is why you got that nickname, Wrench. But who do you think is going to be the new Wrench?
I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I'm thinking it's going to be Gary. Yeah.
It's possible, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
Or Mac. Yeah.
You know, but I'm not sure Mac always appreciated
No.
my last minute. How about this, boys?
Yeah. Did you think about this?
Yeah. Have you thought? Did you think this through? Here's a couple of other possibilities as to how this might end.
I'm dying to hear him say the same thing someday. Yeah, there's always got to be one person on the council that actually remembers things. And
Yeah,
so-
well, Mac, I guess, is now probably the senior member of council.
Yes.
You know, I
think so.
believe. You know, the
He started in his 20th year. I
yeah,
think.
yeah, he'd be the senior member. Because what about Chris? Chris has got to be close too.
No, I don't think so, because he got elected, I think, in that 2010 and 2014, right? 2010, I think, because I nicknamed him the Greenhorn, because he was environmentally leaning, and the new councillor. So
Well,
I gave him that nickname, Greenhorn.
Was that the campaign where he went through people's garbage bags and they weren't very happy about
I think
it?
so. I think it was.
To sort of try to prove that there were a lot of things that could be recycled?
Yeah, I think that was the year. Yeah, so I think that was only like 12 years ago. It might have been 06, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
Was he on there that long? Could he be 16 years? No, it was 2010, 2006. Was he on there in 2006?
I don't know, I'd have to look at all my old pictures.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Either 2006 or 2010, I think. But yeah, should be interesting. Thank you very much for the interview. Anything else you'd like to, any wisdom you'd like to part ways with?
No. Well, I guess we're just going to wait and see, David. I'm sure, you know, the one thing over the years that I found is, you know, the people who've been elected, they do try to do their best. And I think, you know, if I can give anybody any advice, that this is not personal. You know, if you have a disagreement, don't take it outside of the council chamber and make it personal, because it just isn't going to work. You know, you've got to just let stuff on a very professional, be on a very professional basis with your colleagues. You know, just because somebody doesn't agree with the position that you have, well, so what? You know, how many people disagree with anyone at any one given time? I mean, I've always said that if you don't have people who disagree with you, that means you don't stand for anything definite. Because if you take a definite position, there's always going to be somebody who will say yes and somebody who will say no. So that's it. So what if you don't agree with everything?
Leave it in the locker room.
Exactly, yeah.
Good words. Well, thank you.